cyber criminals setting their sights on sports teams, phishing and ransomware attacks becoming much more common. We're hearing a lot more about them. Danny Palmer here with me for ZDNet. And Danny, this article you put together, you highlight several specific incidents where this is happening, some of them really disturbing and quite scary. One in particular that actually kept fans from entering a stadium.
Yes, it's an example of a cyber attack having physical consequences in the real world, as it were. It almost caused the games to be cancelled because the computer systems and security systems were locked out. It's indicated that this team, the unnamed team, did not pay the ransom in this case. But even without that, if the match hadn't gone ahead, if the fans hadn't been able to come in, this could have cost tens of thousands of pounds, maybe hundreds of thousands of pounds in lost revenue, which is highly damaging. And it just goes to show that sports teams are a big target for cyber criminals, because many sports, especially the elite level sports, like the Premier League here in the UK, as those like the NFL in the USA, generate billions and billions in revenue. So it's not really surprising that cyber criminals are going after them, because that's where money is.
Yeah, and the sad thing, really, Danny, is right now, and adding insult to injury, is that all of these sports clubs and teams are just trying to figure out how to even safely get fans into the stands and social distance, and how are they going to handle that? And they're losing money as they're, some of their seasons are being taken away. So to have to deal with all of this, and then now this on top of it, it is really difficult. Talk a little bit about the specific ways that the criminals are getting in through phishing, ransomware, the type of incidents, what they're seeing.
But with the ransomware attack described, it's not known specifically how the attackers got in, but it's suspected it was via an internet-facing security system. So the CCTV system was connected to the internet, and at some point maybe a port was open to the internet, which gave the attackers a way in. And because the network across the infrastructure of the stadium was flat, it meant that they could get to from the security cameras to the corporate things backstage, like your general office computers, and also the turnstiles, which one of the recommendations in the report is basically, if you're running a stadium, do not have it on a flat network like this. Another type of attack detailed in the report was a business email compromise scam, which we recently spoke about, where in this case, the attackers managed to use information about a real transfer going through. An unnamed club in the English Premier League was going to be doing a deal with a club somewhere in Europe about a player. The attackers knew this, and the attackers managed to get hold of the login credentials of a director of this unnamed football club, and managed to basically mimic him to do the deal. And they also managed to mimic the other team as well. And it got to the point where the managing director had transferred the fee, the £1 million fee that he thought was going to be used in this player exchange. And it only got stopped because the bank flagged it as potentially fraudulent, because it wasn't a usual account associated with this sort of thing. There's transfers that are worth tens of millions of pounds, which means that theoretically, if an attacker was convincing enough, mimicked someone enough, they could make off with that sort of money. And the NCSC report noted that email security is not that great among various elite sports, be it football, rugby, athletics, cricket is mentioned in the report, horse racing. All of these are businesses that generate a lot of money, but in many cases, as we're finding out through the lockdown, that money is dependent week to week. So if a smaller club loses a week of revenue, that could be devastating. So it's a real wake-up call for sports teams to become more aware of cyber attacks, which are doing this damage, especially now.
Yeah, and obviously, Danny, you talk and write about cybersecurity all the time, and these types of incidents aren't new. We've talked about them so often, but the same things that have to keep being reminded to companies and organizations and sports teams is, doing their security patches, and what are the things do they need to keep in mind to stay safe?
As you said, patching is one of the key things here because the vast majority of these attacks exploit known vulnerabilities. And because those vulnerabilities are known about, you apply the patches and that blocks them out. As mentioned, making sure your network isn't just one flat segment also helps, because if attackers did manage to get into the corporate network and filled that with ransomware, they couldn't necessarily go from there to the turnstiles to block fans coming into the stadium. So even if your back ends are down, the match could still go ahead. And things like we talk about with all sorts of organizations, like not using default passwords in order to make sure that passwords can't just be guessed by attackers. I mean, some of the most used passwords that are broken is names of sports teams. I mean, you'd hopefully think that sports teams aren't using their own name as a password.
Yeah.
You never know. Someone on the admin team might be using the sports team and a year or a few numbers. So complex passwords is useful there. Plus using multi-factor authentication. So if a network is breached, you get an alert saying, "Was this you?" And if it's not you, you say no, and maybe call your security team to ask them to look into it.
Yeah, so many things to keep in mind. Again, at a time adding insult to injury with everything else that's going on, Danny. Well, I know we've got a great deal more information about business email compromise, as well as phishing attacks and ransomware, and what folks need to know, what companies need to keep in mind, all there on ZDNet. So we appreciate your time today, and we hope all of you will check that out there again on ZDNet. Thanks so much for watching.